Director, okay. Pat, we can dive in.
Let's dive in. Okay, so Michaela, if you want to just flash the agenda on the screen, that would be lovely. But I think what we're ultimately starting with here is a round of introductions. We do have our newest member, and we also have the interim director joining us today. So I would love it if we could just make the rounds, starting with Chair Brown, and then kind of going down the list of members from there.
So, good afternoon, everyone. Julie Brown, Chair of the Oregon Transportation Commission.
Lee Byer, member of the Oregon Transportation Commission, Vice Chair.
Good afternoon, everyone. Lisa Sumption, the Interim Director here at
OregonDOT. Good afternoon, Tova Peltz, Interim Delivery and Operations Division Administrator and Chief Engineer at OregonDOT.
I don't see Paula on, so why don't we just skip to Ted?
Ted Odlin, heavy highway contractor, president of AGC of America, past. Yeah. I'm not past, but that job is.
And we're welcoming Troy Haluska today. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. Troy, if you'd like to introduce yourself to the group.
Good afternoon. Yes, you pronounced that perfectly. Troy Haluska. I am a senior NEPA specialist at CDOT headquarters. I'm also the PEL program manager or PEL program manager here. I have been working in the environmental planning field for about 26, 27 years now. I spent half my career as a consultant on the private side, the first half, and have been with the Colorado Department of Transportation for about 13 years now. I'm excited for this opportunity to be part of your committee. Thank you for having me. Happy to answer any questions.
I think all of us we're thankful that you're willing to join us and be a victim on this committee. So we're thrilled to have you here.
Oh, Chair, be nice. It's a pleasure.
Well, and Troy, as I shared with you, I think when we talked late last year, like the Continuing Improvement Advisory Committee has existed for a number of years, but this is a new iteration of it with some new direction and guidance from our legislature. And so Ted and Paula, who's not here yet or isn't here today, we're both members of the previous iteration of CIAC. Actually, Chair Brown, Vice Chair Byer, and our new members of the committee in in this iteration. It includes our Transportation Commission membership as well, and the director is part of it, and so on as well right now. So it's a little bit of a change up. So this is our second meeting ever in this new iteration, and I think that we're going to go through probably like a lot of more informal conversations this month and next month as we land our approach for the committee moving forward. Kat, do you want me to jump into major project stuff, or you want to provide background?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and provide a little bit of background. So I think at the close of our previous meeting, we had anticipated bringing forward kind of the full major projects quarterly report, which would have consisted of, I think, 18 major projects that we've identified, which are those projects in construction and design and in planning that are anticipated to be over 50 million in construction. And what we learned by kind of gathering that information early on was that we would like to have a kind of another discussion with this group about exactly what we're bringing forward and how it informs the conversations that we want to be having around these major projects, so that we can be really intentional, and so that we can foster that productive conversation about how these projects are progressing. And so what we've done is we've kind of the other kind of component of this is that we with the bill going into effect January 1, we wanted to start with a full quarter of 2026. And so when we bring forward the full report in May, in April, it will be it'll be consisting of information on all the major projects for the first quarter of 2026. And then we have adjusted the quarterly reporting schedule from that point going forward. And so what we'll be covering today is as an example of the template completed for one of the projects. And that way we can kind of walk through it step by step and get your feedback and make changes before we complete a full report and bring that back to you in April. And I'll pass it to Tova now to kind of talk through that piece. I'm also going to be sharing my screen so that as we walk through this, I can write down comments and make changes as we go through with your feedback. And our hope is to have a completed or updated template to be sending out after this committee meetings to be used as kind of a guide for the full report when we send that out in the future. Tova.
Yeah. So today, as Kat said, we're going to walk through a template, and the template is based on is essentially a quarterly report from last quarter for one of the projects that meets the major projects criteria, and that's our I-5 Kubler Boulevard to Delaney Road widening project that is in Region 2. And so that's Savannah Crawford is here. She's a Region 2 manager. And this is what this project's in her portfolio, and her team put together this report. The intention is to walk through the report, not from the standpoint of assessing the state of the project, but more to talk about the content of the report as a template and the content of the report, and ask questions that for everyone here to ask questions about the format and the content, and if there are things that you're interested in that aren't included in the report that you'd like to see us add to the template for future reporting, or if you think that we've gone in the wrong direction, to provide that feedback. But as Kat said, we'll walk through it. The intention is to just give everybody time to acclimate to the information. I think one of the things that we're looking at is we have, I think, 18 projects that meet the major project criteria, $50 million or greater for delivery. And some of those projects are in construction today. Some of those projects are in design today, and some of those projects are in planning. And so we have different templates for those, for different depending on the stage, the stage of the project. Today, we're gonna use a project that's in construction as our example, but it really is still, I think, the terminology and the overall content will be really similar in terms of providing feedback, providing an overview of what this purpose of the project, the scope of the project, the state of the financial health of the project, and schedule, and then project delivery risks are all the primary parts of the report, the reports, and those are the primary parts of projects, whether they're in construction or whether they're in planning. I think the biggest flag is that obviously a project that's in construction is funded to be to be constructed and completed. Most of the projects that are in planning typically aren't fully funded. Sometimes aren't funded for final design, and are typically not largely not funded for construction as well. So over the course of these quarterly reports, we're gonna end up talking about projects that have probably pretty long runways because they aren't fully funded yet. Are there any questions before we dive into Kubler Delaney?
I think one other flag I want folks to keep in mind is that the audience for this is obviously this committee, but also will be the commission, and then ultimately the legislature and the public. And so we want to also be kind of looking at this with that lens, so that we make sure that we make adjustments to this template to ensure that it's easy to understand for those audiences as well.
And Kat will be probably adding notes to the template as we talk, so we can capture those notes, and as she said before, use this as a tool for reviewing future reports. So So I-5 Kubler-Delaney project, we provided background on the scope of the project and where we are in terms of like, is it a phase project and where we are in phasing. And then we describe the scope of that phase. So it breaks down all of the component parts of what we're in this case what we're constructing. And then we're providing the current schedule, and what we're trying to like identify like really flag is when construction started and what the projected completion date for construction is, and whether we're expecting if there are any schedule risks or changes to the schedule anticipated. And I'm going to assume that y'all will like raise your hands or just go off mute and ask questions as questions come up. So I'm going to just keep going until I hear otherwise from our committee here. So if we scroll down to the next section, this is about project funding, and like and because this is a project in construction, we're like this table summarizes the sources of funding for the project, as well as how much is funded, like what funding looked like from phase to phase, like from like across all of the phases of statewide transportation improvement program funding. So that's PE, which is like design, design, right of way, utility relocation, construction, and then other. And so this is just a breakdown of all of the different funding sources by phase, and then the totals by phase. So this is how much money has been allocated and is programmed for the project overall. And then the next scroll to the next.
We have a question.
Question. Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
I really was not planning on being the first to jump in or anything, but one thing that might be some interesting information is the project delivery type, and I'm not sure if your program does a lot of like design build or if it's more traditional design bid build stuff, but that might be something good up front to disclose is what type of project delivery, CMGC, one of those types.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Thanks for that flag.
Sure.
I think that can be up above, and we can flag delivery method. In this case, it's design bid build, but that should be included.
Can we get the bid price of the project?
Yeah, I think we actually share that farther down in like in the breakdown of finances. So what we've done is we've identified at the top of the report the sources of funding, and we're separating the money that's been how the project is funded from project costs. I mean, those two things are obviously related, but we're trying to keep that information like a little bit separate. So in this case, like we have a breakdown of design phase, money spent for the design phase, and then in construction we've identified, like we're showing the construction authorization and the original construction authorization, which was the amount of construction funds like authorized at the time that the project was the time the project was awarded, and then also the current authorization, which reflects if there have been increases in funding to the project over the course of construction. So it isn't explicitly calling out the bid value and the original contract value. But if we scroll down to the next table, there we go. It shows in the notes the contract value. So in this case, you can see like the current authorization and then how much has been spent to date. And then in the notes, it clarifies what the contract value was and how much has been paid to the contractor to date. We can go into, I mean, we obviously have like a lot of a lot of detail about like like all of the component parts of how the contract, like what's been paid in the contract. And we're trying to keep the reports pretty concise. And so in the next section, we're like flagging risks to delivering within the existing budget and the existing authorization, and then also major risk items or scope changes. We're like in this case, we've been looking at it from the standpoint of we have like there can be many change orders on the project, and some of them are like very minor, some of them are like no cost change orders. And so what we've identified for this like report is we're trying to flag change orders that are $500,000 or it should actually be or 30, like more than 30 days, like or like there are substantial changes to both schedule or cost. And so in this particular case, like we actually haven't had any change orders that like exceed the $500,000 mark, but there have been some substantial change orders related to landslide mitigation in this case, adding fencing along the right of way, adding roundabout scope, for example. Our intention, I guess I would love feedback on whether that $500,000 mark looks like the right mark, like the right threshold for y'all, or if you would like to have more of a breakdown and change orders at lower levels. This is definitely something that like we've talked a lot about internally.
Well, I think that when you talk about the change orders and less than 500,000, the problem is that sometimes projects can have so many change orders that it starts escalating the costs. So I think that we need to know about the change orders. I'm just not sure at what threshold.
Well, we could definitely provide a summary of like the accumulated value of change orders to date. And then flag the largest change orders within that, so you can get a feel for how much has changed, or like the cumulative change over the course of construction, which I think would maybe capture that.
I think I'd bring that value down to about half that, maybe 250,000 on a large project.
Okay, that's helpful as well.
I think it would be a good idea to, on an ongoing basis on these, to have a running summary somewhere of what the change orders were. Because I think as Julie was saying, they can add up over a very large project.
Well,
Absolutely.
I think the other thing too is that we forget about them. So when you start having a project escalate out of control, we forget that there was a change order, and it might be a really good reason that the change order had to happen, something that really wasn't planned or even, was on the radar, which helps with the conversation of why the project is escalating. We always say it's inflation, but it's not necessarily true.
So are you thinking that we could, like, that you're looking for like a summary table of change orders to date and like a brief explanation of the change order type or reason?
No, I have to think about it. I mean, that's a lot of data for staff to have to capture, I think. But then if you're only talking about change orders over a certain threshold, then it might not be such a big list. But if we're talking about all change orders, it could really be a lot.
Yeah, that's certainly true. I mean, for example, I know like that we can easily wind up for big like our largest projects that take place over years and years and years. You can easily like, have like 50 change orders isn't unusual. I think we can look at how we can look at how we can simplify that so it's like a meaningful, like it's like a meaningful summary, but like I guess hitting it at the right level. I do think maybe that is certainly something like from quarter to quarter that could change and would be helpful to document.
Tova, I think there's a difference we're talking here. I think just having a running total, not a lot of detail of the change orders, so we see the total cost, but only get into an explanation of those over 250,000.
Okay.
I'm having some issues of trying to envision. This is great right here, but as we go forward on a long project that's going to go a couple of years, a lot of this stuff, I think you want a format that doesn't change. The description of the project
Yeah.
that's just kind of fixed one time. And on an ongoing basis, we're just kind of looking for, I think, a running total of, where are we at on budget, where are we at on, the different changes, what's going on, or on issues that are coming up. So it's more of I don't want it to end up being a book.
Right.
Project.
Right. No, I think that's right. I think Vice Chair that you make a good point. And our intention is to manage the information so it's not like, it's not reams of reporting on every project.
And part of it is, I think, keep it simple so that, I don't think we want to create a whole lot of paperwork unnecessarily.
Yes, agreed. I think that like we'll have to take a look at how to summarize the change orders in a simple and also meaningful way. I think sometimes like the titles of change orders can sometimes be a little obtuse if you're not actually the resident engineer or like an inspector on the project, and that isn't necessarily like meaningful to this committee or the commission or the legislature in terms of like really what happened on this change order. And I think we've certainly gone through that a bit as we've been sharing change order information on the Abernathy Bridge project with some legislators that we've gone through some iterations of how to share that information. So we'll have to we can go back to like what format we've used and how effective that's been at telling the story. And as I said, and was like Kat has said, I think that this first round of reports, you'll probably provide feedback about content and whether we hit the mark or whether we undershot or overshot. And so we can always, the second quarter of reporting can always be an adjustment on exactly how we provided that CCO summary. I think, yeah.
Many of the change orders, the biggest
Mm-hmm.
dollar amount of them are delays. And so you can have an item that's not real major, but it creates a long delay on the
Right.
project.
Yeah.
And that's where it's really going to hit you the hardest. So getting those people to understand, here's what happened, and that created a change and a delay in the project, and that's where the big cost is. So that's what you got to capture somehow.
Mm-hmm.
And I suspect that will also be I would expect that the risk of substantial delays is something that will be flagged in the report as a major risk item. And probably, like in my experience, will develop over time. So what I would expect is that there would be that, like, for a project that has some kind of schedule risk, that will be flagged in this portion of the report under major risk items. And it may take months or quarters or longer for it to actually evolve into like an established change order and financial value. But I think one of the things that I think is valuable about the quarterly reports is that we should be capturing risks that are developing and tracking them over time so that it's not a surprise when they land when the dollar value is landed, because we've seen those risks developing and we've been talking through how we're managing those risks.
Well, I've seen where a problem that we can't get settled immediately on what's the best way to go, the dollar amount on fixing that problem isn't as big as the delay that it created because people couldn't get together and solve it and get it done. So if we do something that shows, hey, we've got an issue, we're getting it solved and we're moving on, uh, that's what'll save the money, I think. So if you're looking at those delays, I think it gives you a pattern to work at solving things faster.
I think that you're right. I will also acknowledge I'm thinking about, like, in some cases these like delay related cost increases are really like play out as claims, and figuring out how to communicate that in a report like this and still manage, I'm gonna say, like manage risk and manage like legal risk for the agency, and how we're communicating about those potentials is something that we're gonna have to talk through. But I do, I mean, I think the intention here, for me, the intention is acknowledging that like there's a known cost risk, a known schedule risk, and tracking it over time, and also tracking how we're managing what our mitigation for that risk will look like. But I think that in the case of the commission and the case of the legislature, it's understanding that there's a cost associated with that, and that cost may play out in months or years to come, and being able to talk about the magnitude of that potential cost.
I think you get at that, Tova, with your narrative on a quarterly basis when you're talking about the changes. And I don't know if there's a way to put a dollar amount when what Ted's talking about there. You're describing what the change and it delayed things for so long, what the effect of that on the budget. And I don't know if there's any way, kind of like the table we were just talking about, add that in there so you have a cumulative running total of added cost to the project, what the item was. But
Well, our biggest problem is we have fish windows, paving windows, and if something stops us early on, we may be able to fix it, but if it throws us into an area where we're out of the fish window and we lose a year because of that, it's catastrophic. And all of a sudden, because we just can't get in. So it's looking at those ahead of time and how do we solve it and move forward so we don't stop. This project you're looking at is all on paving dates. I mean, the whole project is we got to get it paved by a certain date at the end of the year. If we don't, it's got to go clear into the next season. So any delays there is really where you're going. So you got to look way out at what's the effect.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's, but I think that's that's what we need our teams to be doing. I mean, we need to be looking out at the net effect of on schedule, like schedule impact and cost risk. I think Cooper Delaney has been on track, and is on schedule. So it's like this is as a template is a helpful it's a good project. It's not like it's not carrying major schedule risks at this point. So again, and that we're seeing or anticipating. So that's not popping up on this in this particular report. I expect that we're going to have some more robust conversations on some of our other construction projects. We'll also acknowledge that for projects that are years and years of work, the reports are going to get bigger because we're documenting the work the changes that have happened over time, and we should also be seeing items identified as risks over time that are then resolved and mitigated, and these reports should document that as well. All right. This is so we're essentially at the end of the report in terms of content. It sounds like, I guess, Vice Chair Byer, I think that you mentioned putting more in narrative. Do you see that as being a narrative down at the bottom, in this section of the report, or are you thinking you want to see more narrative at the front end of the report, providing a summary of a summary of risks at the very beginning?
Well, the front part of the report, I mean, when you're just describing the project, that's not going to change.
Right.
So you're looking at, if we're looking at this on a quarterly basis, it's really the narrative and maybe some of the numbers. I'm looking at sort of page 2 there. That may change as you're altering that. And I kind of envision the narrative portion on a quarterly monitoring basis, the kinds of things that Ted was talking about. That's probably something that will change a lot. I don't know how you do that on an ongoing basis and keep that. I'm trying to think of something that's very simple that you don't have to create a lot of new paperwork, but we have a history, a log or something of changes, so we have that.
Well, the value is that we'll have.
I can from this committee's work and probably from the commission, kind of monitoring on an ongoing quarterly basis isn't hard. I'm not sure for the public and legislative consumption, they're just not going to have that history and probably don't need all of that.
Well, and we will have an archive of all of the past reports. So to some extent, that archive serves as the documentation of things that have happened, of the past projects. So it doesn't need to be necessarily just continuously adding a singular report. Yeah. I think maybe what we really need to flag is what's changed since last quarter.
Yeah, I mean, I always think when I'm thinking at it, it's kind of from the management perspective of, like you and I've talked before, I'm sort of, are we on budget? Are we not on budget? What are the things that are changing that we need to be aware of, and why are they changing? So we can have that discussion. And that's kind of where my thinking is coming from. I don't know, other members may be seeing it differently.
Ted, you've had the benefit of the previous iteration of CIAC where you were only seeing the final of the summary of the projects once they were completed.
Which really doesn't tell you much.
Right.
In all honesty. because you don't know what happened, what went on.
Do you
Yeah.
see this template and this approach providing more like a more effectively like feedback and insight into what's happening along the way?
Well, I think it's going to help us quite a bit to understand the project, and from each project we should learn for the next one, and that's where I think our benefit is. So I think tracking it and going through it, we can make suggestions. What if we did this? But you'll have a real game plan of how the project went all the way through. Without it, if it's just the end of it and you're looking at it, then you're a Monday morning quarterback and you don't know anything.
Yeah. I agree with that.
So Tova, when I'm looking at this and I'm looking at the narrative here and it's talking about major risk items or scope changes, and and I'm just reading what's written here, and it's like, it has not created any project overruns. Has it not created any project overruns because in the budget we anticipated that? Like if we go back up to the top where the right where the budget change the schedule.
I
You want
think
this piece or
I
this
think
piece?
yeah, like I mean we
This
did increase the construction authorization. And you can see the notes about what's been added. And so the intention here is to describe, like in the notes,
Right.
essentially like
Where the money's coming from and how
Yeah.
it was added to
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Is your question about like that risk being accounted for in the cost estimates that they're like at the origin of the project? Is that like so
I
that's
think
the reason
so.
why it didn't create cost overruns?
Right. Well, I just think that some of the questions that we're going to get, like when we're reporting this out, and I'm just thinking about some of the other projects. Some things were not anticipated. Other things were. How do we capture so that one, I mean, the whole idea behind this is in the future, the next project that we're looking at all these things and trying to make sure that when we're scoping out a project that we're including these ideas into it. But I guess the other piece of it is really, I think one of the things that the commission's struggling with right now is that we're being criticized for the costs of these projects escalating out of control. And I don't know that we're capturing enough of the information in this for legislators for their understanding as to why. I don't know if that's making any sense to you.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Julie,
Or do you think it doesn't matter, Lee?
no, I do. I think it's I think you start out with the framework of what you have here. I think the front part of it is there, but what you really want to do is document changes. And I think we look at that on a quarterly basis.
Right.
And so the question then is, how do you capture our discussion on a quarterly basis? Because what we're really going to be asking, I think, of staff is to say, if there's a change, why did that occur? What did you assume when you put the project together, and what changed, and what was the cost implication of that? And in some way, we have to document that. I think that's kind of a narrative, but maybe having a log, it's almost like minutes of the project, if you will, where people can, as kind of an addenda, go back and see an accumulation of what happened through the construction of the project and what caused that. And I think to Ted's point, having done that on a number of these, we will kind of, through our discussions, start flagging things like, if you did it this way, that might have worked out better if you had thought about this. That kind of structures the learning process.
And I'm right there with you, Lee. I'm going through this in my head and I'm trying to translate it from my parks world, where how we tried to do this with the commission on our projects, because there's always some overrun, there's always something, right? So it's like if you can document that quarterly conversation about what went over, what we didn't anticipate, right, and all the things, and then maybe even halfway through the year, you go back through that whole list and you do lessons learned. Like, will this apply to the next project? Is there something that we're doing? Are we estimating wrong? Are we, procuring wrong, indifferent, whatever? But like, I think we need to have that note in the file that makes it really clear that this is why it went over, what the summary of lessons learned are, and then make sure that we're not repeating them and not back to another project being over yet again.
So, I mean, it sounds like we should perhaps add a heading on lessons learned that can be like to some extent like a running list of lessons learned. That we can.
I think it goes to your changes, right? Like, what did we not
Yeah.
scope and what
Yeah.
changed from the scope? Because it's always hard, right? Like you do the scope and all of a sudden you get in and it's a cultural resource issue, or it's a natural resource issue, or it's a wetland issue, or it's a, slide, or whatever the thing is, right? There's always something. And it's like how I think what Lee's trying to get to is like, how do we better anticipate what those things are going to be? So that way we don't have the same error on the next project. And I know they're all in different places, but it's just creating that transparency and that accountability that we understand those things. And that's not clear in this.
I'm kind of thinking if you had, I'm thinking on an ongoing basis, if you had the table, like we were talking change orders, if you just had change order or whatever else
Why?
cost and increase in cost, if you just had a log that's just that summarized there, and then on an ongoing basis, just had a narrative, of you kind of got stuff here. It wouldn't have to be real detailed, but materials went up, X amount for steel or something like that. So you have an ongoing basis of what happened in the project. And I'm trying to think of how you do that without creating a whole lot of paperwork for staff.
Well, so I'm thinking about this, I guess, in two different ways. Like on one, like I think that on one hand, we want to learn lessons over the course of delivering projects to inform how we deliver future projects. And that is definitely that definitely gets filed very firmly under continuous improvement. Like that's how we demonstrate, that's how we continuously improve. I feel like that is sort of a portfolio scale assessment of how we're learning and making changes and growing and improving. And then there's like project specific documentation of what's happening on an individual basis on projects. And perhaps it's something that we could do as the continuous improvement advisory committee is on a quarterly basis or twice a year basis or once a year basis, do have a discussion as a group about things that we've seen across the quarterly reports and across the projects to put together a summary of a summary overview of lessons learned and discuss that. And maybe that's something that my team can take the lead on, us sort of analyzing everything that we've done over the course of a set period of time, and then that prompts a discussion in this group separate from the quarterly reports, but based on the what we've learned and seen over the course of a portfolio's worth of quarterly reports. But then but in the individual project quarterly reports, we're tracking the change orders, we're documenting what's changed on those individual projects, but we take time separate from the quarterly reports themselves to assess overall what have we seen and as a committee and document that, and then provide that basically that conversation and discussion back to my project delivery team. And maybe one of the things that comes out of that is some opportunities for process improvements or learning opportunities that we can actually implement within our project delivery team.
And Tova,
That's-
conversely, I'm kind of thinking too, and this might be harder to capture and document, but also what's gone right. For instance, this project
Yeah.
here doesn't have any cost overruns. What's happening on this project that's going right that we can implement on other projects as well? Like, was it,
Yeah.
you know, a more robust planning or what?
Absolutely. I think that's a great flag.
You know, I think a lot of that will just happen organically as we meet quarterly and do things and just schedule that. But you really have two functions that we're trying to do here, and I'm trying to separate that in my head. From the commission's perspective, it's an ongoing, are the projects running well?
Right.
So that's sort of are we on budget? Are there major problems? That's one piece. And that's, to some extent, that's probably more where the policymakers over in the Capitol are at too. At the end of the day, what happened? And the other one is just much more of where what you're saying, Tova, and I like that, is as we talk through these projects, I think we probably need to, as a committee, not necessarily every quarter, but maybe a couple times a year or so, set and say, what have we learned from overseeing 18 projects? What are the flags coming up? And as Ted was saying, where can we make recommendations in general that will improve the process? That sort of was the original idea of the committee when it was the legislature created it in 2017.
As we list these changes, though, we really need to look at what it's done to the schedule.
Yeah.
Because if it kicks the schedule out, stops us for a fish window, paving window, what have you, those are the big things that people can't understand unless you point it out to them.
Yeah. You've made that very clear, Ted, on a number of occasions.
Ted, I think that's it. And I know you've said it, and I think that really what brings to mind for me is that we often talk about scope, schedule, and budget as though they're three independent things, but they're three things that have threads that have common threads, and when you tug on one, it has an impact on the others, and that's how we need to always be thinking about it. That those are the components of a healthy project: managing the schedule, managing the budget, managing the scope, and changes to any of those things impact the other two. And so we need to always be able to communicate if there's a change in schedule, what is the associated change in costs, or if there's a change in scope, associated change in schedule, change in costs, and so on. So I think that making sure that that's really clear in this reporting is important.
Well, I can tell you on this project we're looking at, you've got a great team up there. The contractor, the folks running the project, they are all working together. They're all looking at issues. How do we speed things up? How do we make our windows? And they understand the paving window is critical, and they're working together, and that's why you've got a real good project. So a lot of this for me goes back to, we got to get back to the team working together all for the project, and we'll do better, but we got to have everybody working together.
Well, I love that. I love that note. I mean, I can see Savannah's smile on camera, because that's her team. That's her team and project in her portfolio. You know, she will certainly pass that message along. But that's certainly a big part of what we've seen is we have a really functional collaboration between our design team and our contractor, and that is working really, really well. And honestly, my experience in construction projects is that you can really have a project that has things that are hard and high risk and difficult and challenging, but if the team works really well together, it can be the outcomes can still be positive. frankly, even when like there's a cost impact or a schedule impact with a good team, it can still be the outcomes can still be positive. But I appreciate that sentiment. I think that it sounds like we need to work on adding like a change log to the template, and I think we can what we want to do is have is truly have a template for that, so that they're all like for all the projects we're using the same, like all projects of construction we're using similar kind of log, and so we're as you're looking from project to project, it's not you get more of an apples to apples comparison. So we will work on that, and also having maybe more of an expansive narrative explaining the outcome, like the impacts of the changes across the projects, and maybe also like some space for the team, like for the region team to like reflect on lessons learned, things that have gone well and things that have also gone sideways, so we can just keep the teams running log of that, to think about how we want to capture that as well. Are there from the standpoint of sharing information about project finances, do the tables that we've included make sense? Is there information that you'd like, additional information that you'd like, or information that's perhaps confusing? All right. Any other thoughts or feedback about what's in this template?
Well, again, I just would comment, because my concern is not creating a whole lot of unnecessary busy work. Using the format so it's just additive, so you don't have to. I envision you're having this on your computer. Once you create the project, it's just only having to add the changes, not recreating it all over again.
Understood and agreed. I'm curious because I'm like, this is just something was thinking about leading up to this meeting. Is it helpful would it be helpful to have like a map linked or anything to like show project location for folks? And I guess maybe also thinking about whether that would be helpful for the other commissioners and the legislature.
My gut level is I love that kind of stuff, but I wouldn't want you to be having to print it out. If there's a link or something where you could get at it electronically, I don't know if you envision putting this on the website.
Yeah.
I think that can be really helpful.
I think people like to see it visually, Tova, and they like to see it by county. And it helps better tell the story. So I love that.
I know exactly where this project is.
You got stuck in traffic there.
I would love if that project would finish up so I wouldn't have to drive it at night.
Maybe you can use those nice drones we have and take pictures to demonstrate progress.
The one thing I think too is be helpful to me is maybe if you sent me this document, just so I could just ponder on it for a little bit and look at it over and over for the next couple of days, and maybe something would pop in my mind of additional. But I like the way it flows.
The document is in the packet for the project, for the meeting. there's just a single packet for the meeting, so it's the agenda, and if you keep scrolling, you'll
Yeah.
get to.
In the agenda, okay, I didn't see it.
Yeah, just keep, if it's, that PDF is 6 pages long, and the first page is the agenda, and then you dive right into the report.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. For
No,
some reason.
it's fine, it's like, but
So that
like,
was in the invite.
yes, is that right, Kat?
It was an invite, and I also sent it via email.
Okay, and are you
I can resend it to you directly though, just
are
to
you
put it at the top of
sending
the
it
box.
to my ODOT email, because I don't have access to my ODOT email?
I will double check that, but either way, I'll just send it to you directly so you have it like at the top of your inbox, and then from this point forward, I will make sure that it's not your ODOT email that we're sending it to.
Actually, I'm okay. I've got it, Kat, now, because
Okay.
I just didn't scroll down far enough.
Okay.
I was only looking at the agenda for some reason.
And what we'll do
PDF.
after this meeting is we'll send out the version that Kat is sharing on the screen that has the notes added, and then y'all can see the comments. And honestly, we can, if you want to add comments, like additional comments, I think that's fine to like get it back to us that way.
Yeah, I will note, I think a lot of the comments we received, I think are more directive to staff on what we populate in the template versus how we might like modify the template. But and also they haven't resulted in exact changes to the template quite yet. But yeah, absolutely. I'll send it with the comments on there.
Thank you.
You know, the thing that I'm thinking of, the comments that legislators had made in the past, the things that they were major or most concerned about seem to be additions to the project after it was initially approved. You kind of
Mhm.
capture that here. And the other one was major drivers, when projects went over the budget, what caused that? And those were I think the two causes of that for most of them was additions to the project that were made after it was originally approved, generally at local government or partners' request. And then, differences that came up. I'm thinking like Abernathy, where the discovery of the plans and stuff were just wrong. You had to make changes.
Yeah.
Well, and I think, Lee, if you think about some of the conversations we've had and what they keep saying to us is that they keep referring to it as scope creep. And it's like, not necessarily. There may be another project that's in the vicinity that was already has money tied to it. It's already, and I'm not sure how we capture that into when it's pulled into a project.
I think Tova and Kat have kind of got it in this chart here.
Well,
You've got the addition in there, and frankly, you're gonna do it. You're only gonna capture it by adding the narrative someplace.
I think that we'll see more of that in when we're looking at the reports for projects in design, because I think that the projects in design are like more susceptible to scope creep, and but in our case, like in many cases, like combining scopes from multiple projects into a singular project and adding scope, but also adding funds and like documenting that. And I think we'll see that in those design phase project near quarterly reports more than we will in the construction phase ones. And also the projects that are in planning that are not yet fully not where the scope is not yet fully formed, and we're going through iterations of determining what the scope of the projects will be. You will also see that. I feel like the conversations that we've had with the Joint Transportation Oversight Committee most recently, have really focused on what is the appropriate amount of work to put into establishing the scope, planning a project and establishing a scope and establishing a cost range or the cost estimate before we make large scale funding commitments and schedule commitments, and a recognition that we need to put some time in before we start making major funding commitments.
Yeah, what that, Tova, you'll largely take care of that problem with the shift to the 10-year plan and not putting it into the STIP until we pretty much got the concept refined.
Yeah, I think that's true. Kat, you're still sharing your screen, so we lost the report.
There we go.
Thanks.
So looking at that, I mean, it shows that we added $557,000 from Marion County for a roundabout. I mean, that's the kind of information I think is critical so that we can defend some of the, because they don't necessarily know, they're just throwing things out that they've heard.
Yeah. I'm thinking of the Central Oregon 97 projects.
I didn't want to think about them.
Well, it's a good project.
It is a good project, but there was a lot added then, and a lot came from other places.
Yeah.
One of the parts of the House Bill 3991 included a process for bringing scope changes that have been driven by local agencies forward to the joint oversight committee for consideration. And I believe that's scope changes that don't come with money, that are locals driving, like local agencies driving a change in scope that doesn't have associated funding. And I think that that's a little bit different than what we saw in US 97, or what we like in the case of Cooper Delaney. Marion County added funds, and a roundabout, like there was scope added, and there was also local money added. But I think that all now will be captured in this reporting requirement, an approval requirement through House Bill 3991.
Actually, Tova, I think they were talking about both.
But money, like scope added with money and scope added without money.
Both.
Okay. So that will be more transparently shared moving forward.
Yeah.
Which is certainly valuable, and we're working through like what the process looks like, because we'll have to set up a new process and a new reporting mechanism around that. All right. I think agenda-wise, we have gotten through this conversation about our major projects quarterly report. And it sounds like for our April agenda, let's see, Kat, will we be bringing the draft quarterly to the April agenda, or it will be to the April agenda that will.
Yeah, I
Well,
think
that
Michaela's
just-
bringing
well,
up
that-
the work plan right now.
Okay, great.
Will that be all 18 projects in a format like this?
Yes. Yes.
And is your intent that we would just run through those projects as a committee?
With 18 hours, perhaps, but I think that I think that we're going to provide the report in like a week in advance for all 18 projects, and then we were going to present on the largest of those projects, which I think the $250 million threshold was what was set in legislation, and so only a fraction of those 18 projects meet that $250 million threshold. I think our intention was to like present about those specifically, and then if there were questions or comments about the other projects from the committee, we could also like address those during the meeting.
That makes sense to me. The only thing I would add to that would be if one of the smaller projects had some kind of major deviation or problem, you should probably bring that up.
Yep, we can do that. So we are sharing right now the work plan for the committee. So that shows that we'll be looking at the major project quarterly reports in April. So our March meeting, we will do a update and presentation about the capital investment plan and major projects, and talk about our portfolio management metrics, which are about really about about the performance measures on time and on budget performance. And then in April, we'll do the major project quarterly reports, and
Mhm.
I think the thing we'll flag too is that so in April we'll bring forward the first full major quarterly report, major projects quarterly report, and get your feedback on kind of what you're seeing there across all 18 projects, and also across those projects that are in planning, design, and construction, to see if there's other things that we need to make adjustments to for projects in different phases. And then we'll be taking that to the full Transportation Commission and then submitting it to the legislature. And I believe we'll probably get feedback in those spaces as well, potentially, and make adjustments. And then we'll bring all of that back to the committee for us to chew on kind of any additional feedback that we get in those other spaces, and what we can kind of do for these reports going forward.
Lisa, and Tova, is it your intent that this process, these reports, would be what you would use on I'm thinking of the legislative interim as reports to the transportation committees? I mean, that seems like if you get into a process like that where you're on their agenda on a routine basis, it'll head off a lot of problems.
Sure, it seems like we can get this fine-tuned and bring it there. That's an easy crossover.
That's what I tried to do when I chaired that committee in the Senate during the time, and it wasn't a consistent report, but we always had Paul or Chris in there giving the report, and I'll be honest, the legislators for the most part weren't interested.
And that's my only worry, is if it creates more questions, or if there's interest. There could be over interest these days.
Well, if they're not interested, as long as you're there making the report, there's a little bit of "I told you so."
Exactly.
So I think, as I mentioned at the last meeting, we will continue to kind of populate out the work plan for the later part of the year as we move through the first kind of 6 months of this year, to get a sense of what the committee wants to hear from us, and what we based on your feedback, what we need to bring back for us to continue to work on.
I think the work plan looks great. I think we won't know until we go through a couple of these cycles.
Right.
Yeah, I think we retool it as needed as we go through a couple of quarters and see how things go, and also get feedback from the legislature. All right. So our next meeting is scheduled for 1 p.m. on March 18th, and that will be just a 1 hour meeting. And on that note, unless other folks have things to add, I think that we can wrap up for today.
Okay.
Sound all right? Okay. Appreciate everybody being here. Appreciate the conversation. Savannah, thank you to your team for putting together the draft report for us to use as a model, and for putting all the information out there. And appreciate the discussion today very much, and feedback. So we will put it to good use as we work on the template for this first quarter. And I will look forward to seeing folks next month.
Everybody, it was nice to meet you, Ted, Troy.
Great.
Thank you for
Thank
joining us.
Indeed.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.